Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Patrick Flynn, and welcome to this morning's A Different Perspective. I am so excited to be here with you this morning. It is December 28th, the last day of last weekend of the year, and I just want to recap. I want to thank you for what has happened for just this program and this show alone. Statistically, it has reached millions of people across the world. I'm indebted to you guys forever because I can't do this without you, and I thank you so much for sharing the message that we have. It's kind of cool because, as I've always shared with you guys, there's a ton of people behind the scenes right now that you can't see that constantly work and see this stuff. And it's kind of neat that the other day we watched one of my videos be played in Russia, in Ukraine, in Australia, in South America, in the United States, in Canada. And it was kind of neat, and the comments that we get and the message that we get are just actually sometimes devastating because people are so sick and suffering, but heartwarming knowing that there's things that we can do for people all over the world. So thank you as you share these. I do appreciate it. It's been a great 2019, and it will be even a better 2020 because we will continue to bring you great things. Now, on a little crappier topic today, we're going to talk about constipation. Just had to say it. So we're going to talk about constipation today because I believe I'm going to bring you a different perspective on it because, once again, I'm going to share my clinical experience with it because it's something that statistically I was blown away when the amount of people that suffer from this worldwide. I'm going to share some statistics in a little bit. You say, Doc, you guys deal with a lot of GI problems. Why have you never talked about constipation? Well, because I have a strong opinion on this topic. So let me say this again. I will present great statistical facts and stuff to you today, but I'm going to tell you right now, the majority of this one is my opinion. Okay, let me say that again. The majority of today is my opinion. Now, you guys know I do this on a regular basis. I like to share a lot of scientific statistics and things, but then what happens is because we're going to have a different perspective on it, I want to share my opinion. And people don't realize that the majority of things that you guys get from doctors are opinions. That's why all of a sudden if you go in and get a certain diagnosis and on their plan they say you can get a second opinion. Well, what was the first? An opinion. So this is a topic that I haven't really covered because I like to be a little bit more specific on my topics, but this is actually a topic that's based a lot of an opinion. So I'm going to give you my very strong opinion at the end, but let me walk you through how I came up to that conclusion, how I have, in the Wellness Way, has a different perspective on this. And it started, once again, everything I tell you comes from one major thing, clinical experience. See, that's the cool thing about, I'm excited that our message travels because of digital things all over the world. But our conclusions that we come up with are based on our clinical outcomes. Meaning what? Well, let me show you a very devastating thing that happened to me early in practice, that a patient came in with, obviously, constipation. And it was interesting because she brought in her x-rays back when x-rays were x-rays. They weren't digital. She actually brought in her plain film x-ray this way. And here was her age. She was 39 years old. She had a bowel movement once every 2 weeks. So imagine that. She had a bowel movement once every 2 weeks. Now, that statistically, that's going to be very devastating because she still ate every day. So just by the nature of in and out, it is dramatic what she was impacted on. She was actually, believe it or not, she was kind of a petite lady, but she always looked like she was pregnant because the amount of things that weren't coming out of her but still stayed in her. All right. Now, she did enemas after a while almost every other day just to try to clear things out. She was at a point in her life at 39 years old that if she didn't do some form of enema, she couldn't have a bowel movement. And it was very sad for her. Now, once again, 39 years old, she had been dealing with this since she was actually in her early 20s. It just progressively got bad. And then by the time she came to me, think about this, guys. She had probably seen over 20 different doctors just to try to get her bowels to move. Just try to get them move. Now, also, in that year alone, in the year 2000, because she came to me beginning of 2001, she actually was in the ER 20 times because backed up stool, constipation, can cause a lot of major health problems, even toxemia, which is where the stool does not move out and it poisons itself. She was actually in the ER over 20 times in 1 year. It was significant. This person actually had some, at this time, being a young doc, I've never seen anything like this in practice. And so I started to search and see everything she went through. And it's kind of interesting because to me, a history is different than our current history. Because the doctor says, sit down, tell me what's going on. Well, you get that from every doc. But see, what happened is this. My history with her is to see where she came from. And I asked her a very simple question. I said, what is your plan going forward? All those doctors that you've seen, that your insurance covered, all the specialists, all these people that you've actually taken things from, what is their plan going forward? And she said, they don't have a plan. That's something that I want to run on for just a second. If you are at any stage of health, constipation, diarrhea, infertility, endometriosis, all these things, all the conditions that are statistically, even in 2019, going up, and you are under a care of anybody, even a wellness way doc, but I know the answer for the wellness way docs, you must ask them, what is my plan going forward? Is 2019 going to be the same thing as 2020? Is 2020 going to be the same as 21? Because this woman actually had these problems since the 80s. And now we're in 2001, and she's 39 years old, and she can't have a bowel movement without some form of physical stimulation like an enema. So take that as a New Year's resolution, is to have a plan. See, I tell people, if you don't plan your life, somebody else will. And most people don't give a crap about your life. Actually, that's a quote, but it's kind of funny we're talking that during constipation. But it's not a joke. I'm training my docs on Tuesday. That's my exact quote. Because you should have a plan for almost everything you do in life. And so the cool thing is this. So she didn't have a plan. And so I looked at her and said, okay, then we need to go in a different direction. We need to go in have a different perspective. Because I will tell you this is not a joke. She was not only taking medications at the time, which I'll show you in a little bit what she was doing, but she was also taking a bunch of natural things with no end in sight. So let's do this. Let's step back, because once again, I want you guys to understand what constipation is, and when they diagnose you with it, what is the outcome? What is the plan of the situation? So what is constipation? Well, you guys know this. For you guys that may be new, why do I always pull different references? Because here's what people do. They always say, the experts say, well, Mayo Clinic is one of the most places that have probably the most experts. So I always pull things, and it's pretty much defined everywhere medically the same. But I want you to think about this. Constipation is defined as this. Chronic constipation is infrequent bowel movements or difficult passage of stool that persists for several weeks or longer. Constipation is generally described as having fewer than 3 bowel movements a week. Now, some of you guys say, Doc, that might be, that's kind of uncommon. It's actually not uncommon at all. You're going to statistically find out that a lot of people do suffer from constipation, even if they do have more than 3 bowel movements per week. Because I'll give you a little idea. Okay, people say, Doc, I poop every day. Fantastic. I want somebody to poop every day. Now that can change a little bit based if you're fasting and things like that. But the majority of people have to have a bowel movement per day, or if not 2. And I'm going to show you why constipation, in my opinion, exists and what we can do to change it. But like I said, right now, if you're not having a bowel movement every single day, you're actually causing extra work on not only your digestive tract, but every other system in the body, because they're all connected. Remember, go back to my Swiss watch principle analogy. Every gear affects every gear. That's why that woman was in the ER 20 times. She wasn't in the ER because her belly just hurt. Man, she was in there because she was nauseated, she was toxic, she had migraine headaches from it that way. The array of symptoms that come from constipation, once again, is vast. Now, so let's go on, okay? Now, treatment of chronic constipation depends on the underlying causes. However, In some cases, a cause is never found. Let me say that. A cause is never found. Why would they say a cause is never found? Because once again, I have a perspective on that and why it's different than theirs. Because I believe the causes can be found. Now, symptoms. Now, this is going to relate to a lot of people. I can honestly tell you, probably 90% of the people that walk through a Wellness Way door or any doctor's door is going to have some form of symptoms like this. Number one, passes fewer than 3 stools per week. Have lumpy and hard stools. I can honestly tell you, I can tell you that I have seen not only adults but mainly children that their stool was so hard and lumpy that it actually tore their rectum and they bled. Sometimes parents were like, oh my goodness, there's blood in my child's stool. I'm like, not blood in the stool. They actually tore the intestinal tract and cut it. And just like if you cut the finger, it bled. Yes, when it comes into your stool, people obviously relate that with cancer, but it wasn't. But you're going to find out that some people actually can affect their rectum very badly from just having some form of constipation, because here's what happens. What a stool should really look like, I will give you a funny analogy. I love comedy movies because everybody knows I love to laugh a lot. So Jim Carrey's movie, Me, Myself, and Irene. Funny movie. But do you remember the scene where all of a sudden, he goes a little crazy because his neighbor is always stealing his paper? So he goes over to the house, rips the paper out from them when he was in the bathroom, and then squats on the neighbor's lawn, and all of a sudden you see chocolate soft serve ice cream come at the next scene. That's what stool is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be, thin, smooth. It's not supposed to look like a bunch of rabbit turds jammed together that's kind of dry dropping out. You know what I'm saying? It should be a nice soft serve ice cream. If you poop and it goes drip, 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 and there's little, rabbit turds, that's constipation, even if you poop every day. So constipation should be not only defined by how much you poop, but what your poop looks like. Because as your body time transitioning through your colon, guess what happens? It can actually lead to constipation even if you poop every day. So I actually don't like that the symptoms are defined as less than 3 stools a week. You can poop every day and you can still be constipated. You can poop every day and you can still have fecal matter left in there. And we want to make sure that's clearing out. Now, as we look at here, some crazy statistics that kind of blew me away a little bit. Because I said, Doc, you're covering constipation. Why are you covering it? Because you guys asked for it. All right? Because this term is thrown around. I don't really cover a lot of topics that people want to talk about, because honestly, like I told you when I first started this, there's a lot of opinion based on here, because constipation, honestly, guys, isn't a real thing. Constipation isn't a measurable entity. It's not like having low white blood cells. Constipation is an effect. We don't poop as much. The stool's a little different. Yes, people suffer from the effects and they can lead to some major health problems, but constipation is basically an opinion. It's just an opinion going, not pooping enough, there. Well, I can tell you right now, I kind of disagree with them not pooping enough. So when I looked at the statistics of what they've actually categorized and diagnosis, here's the one thing they found just in the U.S. alone. Constipation is one of the most common digestive problems in the United States, affecting around 2.5 million people. Meaning what? Where they get that stat from is people that they actually give it a diagnosis to, and then it goes to insurance and healthcare statistics. Okay, that's where they get some of their statistics, just where people being diagnosed with it, and then they follow through, they check insurance reports, and they say, look, at 2.5 million actually suffer from it. Why? Because the doctors diagnosed them with them. But they estimated over 20 million people take some form of laxative each year. Now think about that. So they have the statistics that's diagnosed with it, but then there's over-the-counter just laxatives itself. And statistically, they found out that roughly 20 million people buy them. That's a significant amount of people in the U.S. That's a huge number. So I understand why people want to understand about this topic, because once again, they're seeing the effects. Constipation is an effect. Just remember that. Constipation is not a cause. That's why if you ever look, they talk about don't know unknown causes that way. It's totally just an observation effect. Let me say it again. It's just an observation effect. There's nothing diagnostically that you can actually do to measure constipation beyond just a questionnaire about how much are you having bowel movements. and what does it look like and what's coming out of you? Okay, that's why it's kind of a tough topic to discuss. So now, one of the most common reasons people ended up in the ER. That statistic blew me away. But until I started to really look at some of the major causal effects of this, I was kind of surprised that people are actually run to the ER based on constipation, but I'll explain why once I show you some of the major things that lead to constipation. There are over 20 different medications to treat it. Man, that kind of, once again, blew me away, because constipation, once again, is encompassing so many things that there's 20 different forms of medication. 20 different. Meaning they do different things. And I was like, how the heck can there be 20 different medications for it that way? Once again, they got stool softeners. They have things that change water. They have things that actually change the muscular system. It's like, oh my goodness. Well, I realize what happens is that's why, if you ever notice, they have such an array, because once again, they don't know all the causal factors that when they think about it medically, so they just throw the kitchen sink at it. Now, here is the funny part though. It's more common in, here we go. Watch this. Who suffers from constipation more? Men or women? Who suffers from it more? Men or women? I want you to do me a favor. Put your guess in the comments below. And if you put a guess in the comments below, I will actually put you in the drawing an extra time for the women's event grand prize coming up here on February 1st, when we fly somebody into Green Bay to spend the weekend at the Flynn household and enjoy the event and the VIP party and everything that way we're going to have. So the idea is this, just if you put a guess in there, even if you're right or wrong, guess what happens? We'll put you extra in the drawing. So I'm going to give you just a second to do that. Take a little sip of my coffee. And thank you to my beautiful bride that created my Christie cup. I have another one. So took pictures. It was beautiful. So now, put the guess in there. And yes, a lot of you women are answering correctly. Actually, the funny part is this, is women actually suffer more from constipation than men. Dramatically 3-to-1. 3-to-1. I was like, so out of the roughly the 2.5 million, roughly 1.6 million suffer that have been diagnosed, actually women. But then I was like, hold the phone. You know, why are women statistically, why would they suffer from constipation more than men? And that's when I had my light bulb moment. And speaking of my wife, it relates to this. As you guys know, Christy suffered from ulcerative colitis, which can in turn actually cause more diarrhea than constipation. But she suffered from major intestinal problems that led to those things that transition. So the idea is this, so I had my light bulb moment going, listen, if you look at constipation, it talks about a decrease in amount of bowel movements. And to really understand the perspectives that I always come up with, everything that I bring to you is based on, number one, anatomy, 2, physiology, biochemistry, immunology, all of these studies of how just the body works itself. So my conclusions are always based on an observation. That's what a doctor should do. It should observe what is happening physiologically, and why, if there's a transition, and why are men different than women? And that's when it hit me. I'm like, this is all about transit time. Now, what do I mean? Let's talk about this. The transit time from the time that you eat something to the time it leaves your rectum roughly can go from 45 to 50 hours. Well, you say, Doc, but you know, if we're constipated. No. Constipation, for example, is actually a slower transit time. That's all it is. It's a transition time from mouth to rectum. So if any form of your digestive process is actually interfered with, aggravated, deficient, the transit time can be thrown off. Now on the flip side, you can actually have conditions and other things where transit time is actually, accelerated, and you're like, oh my goodness, the food went right through me. But just in general, you'll find out that people suffer more from constipation in the US than they ever do diarrhea. Now, just a little statistic. Think about this. Outside the United States, especially in non-developed countries, more people suffer from diarrhea, dehydration, and can actually even die from it than they do in the United States. That right now isn't even a thought with most people when it comes to healthcare conditions in the United States. But if you think about it this way, is because here's what happens. You say, Doc, if you ever notice when you get some form of diarrhea, there's usually some form of infection in the large intestine. See, you're going to find out constipation has very little to do with actually infections. You have more chance of actually having diarrhea with an infection than you actually have with constipation. Now, there's going to be a lot of things that come up that actually involve in constipation and contribute to it that way. But that's why if you ever notice, one of the easiest ways to clean you out is get a cold. You understand? Not you want to use that as a therapy, but the idea is this. You get a cold, man, that's like you're running to the bathroom 10 times in a day. Because why? Because an infection has a different effect on the large intestine or even on the small intestine than actually the things that contribute to constipation. So it hit me. I'm like, well, listen. So if the stomach has a problem, if the small intestine has a problem, guess what happens? Both in men and women, it takes a certain transition time for food from its eaten to be transitioned through the stomach. I kind of find this funny, okay? And actually we have a student. His name is Sable. He is actually a workout fiend. And we had a conversation a couple months ago about this. And he's like, Doc, I love fitness and things like that. And we were talking about this. I do find this kind of funny. Guys, if you're going to go work out after this video and you're drinking a pre-workout shake, unless you're really basing it on sugar, on trying to get some glucose in you, here's what happens. That protein that you're eating, that won't even get through the stomach for at least 5 to 6 hours, both men and women. So this whole idea of a protein shake before you go working out clinically doesn't make any sense. So that's why I was kind of fascinated by all this pre and post workout shakes. It's kind of funny because we actually expanded our media team, and I'm hoping that this happened to you. But our new videographer Jason, when I said that, he kind of gave me a little flinch on there, like, "Hey, that's what I want to show you guys." Because once again, he's never heard me say that before. Because you say, Doc, how can you make that assessment? Well, do me a favor. If it takes, on the average of things to digest through your stomach, 4 to 5 hours, and especially proteins, sugars, you don't need the stomach. Actually, you can absorb sugars right in your mouth. You can get them in your bloodstream very quickly that way. But so therefore, if your workout shake is based on glucose and maybe some energy, okay, maybe that's a pre-workout shake. But when you're actually looking at, I'm going to work out and then I'm going to do a pre and post-workout shake, I'm sitting there going, do you understand that pre and post-workout shake is actually in your stomach at the same time if you only worked out for an hour or two? Because you're going to drink it before you go and you're going to come back and drink another shake, you have the same mix in your stomach. See, the transition time makes no sense. So we have a whole workout industry that, you can actually put a t-shirt on and show your muscles and sell them, and all the stuff you want, but you are not physiologically sound with a pre and post workout shake. Now, if you want to say pre and post workout glucose and sugar high, that can be done. But that doesn't work that way. So therefore, now get this. This is if you have a good stomach. That's if you have a good stomach. Go back and watch some of the other videos where I talk about just the stomach alone and how this can affect the transit time and lead to constipation. Now, number 2, the small intestine, 5 to 7 hours. There we go again. So let's look at this. 5 to 7 hours, guess what happens? If you think about it, the small intestine is where most of our nutrients and most of our protein and stuff like that is absorbed. So if you look at, for example, once again, I know I'm picking on the workout shakes, but I just watch these commercials and I watched on Instagram and Facebook the amount of people in the workout industry constantly selling this stuff. It's not physiologically sound. It doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? If anything, if you eat a shake this morning, what happens is it's more for tomorrow's workout than it is for today's. See, if you just have a decent diet on a regular basis, you don't need pre and post workout shakes. See, because the transition time of actually things going through make no clinical sense. Now, but here's the big difference. The large intestine, the colon, men it roughly takes about 33 hours, women about 40 hours. So by nature, women are going to actually have a slower transition time. So anything that actually slows it down a little bit more leads them to have greater forms of constipation. And I'm like, so there's multiple factors compared to women, compared to men, that can lead to constipation. That's why it's 2 to 1, because their bodies by nature are more sensitive than guys. And there are some hormonal things why. Yes, this has a bunch to do with hormones, both progesterone and testosterone. Now, once again, you say, Doc, guys have testosterone? Yeah. And guess what happens? If their testosterone starts to get low, it can be one of the contributing factors to constipation. So let's go on. So I want you to understand this. As you know, you got the stomach here, you got the small intestine, and then you got the large intestine, which is actually the colon. All right. Now what happens is that big old colon there is a slow transition. Why? Because it's trying to absorb and actually ferment things in the large intestine. See, the majority of your microflora, I know people say we have microflora over, we do. But the majority of our microflora actually exists in a large intestine. Why? Because what it does when food gets there, it ferments and it goes slow. It's supposed to go slow through there. Okay, it's supposed to. It's supposed to actually ferment, and you produce some vitamins and minerals, and your major water absorption happens in your large intestine. So it's going to extract as much as it can through there. So that's why, once again, as it ferments, it starts to expand. It's like bread. If you actually have all the ingredients and then finally put the yeast in, what does it do? It expands. Well, that's why that is supposed to happen in the large intestine. If that happens in the small intestine, you'll start to see belly distension. And that's why SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, is so common today. Because once again, things are happening through this whole transit time to where it's spending a little too much time in the small intestine, a lot of time in the large intestine. And guess what happens? If that fermentation, if that digestive process that's needed takes too much time in the large intestine, guess where that bacteria go? They start going right at the small colon. They start going right up the small intestine. And they start to make its way all the way up to the stomach, to the throat, and even to the mouth. Now, if it gets to the mouth that way, we call it thrush for a baby. See, so those are the things that happen. And it's actually like, it's not only backing up, but then the bacteria are saying, well, guess what? We're going to travel up. And it starts making its way up instead of down. And that's why there's so much SIBO today, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which SIBO can get downright nasty. See, there's certain bacteria that belong in certain areas of the body. Let me give you an example. Do you understand that we have staph lococcus all over our skin? You say, Doc, people die of staph infections all the time. Yes, because you don't want it in your bloodstream. So I want you to think about this. If you are an elderly person and you're immobile and you're sitting at a nursing home and all you do is sit all day long, a lot of reasons why people die in elderly folks' homes is because they get ulcers from sitting too much, and their normal staph that's on their skin leaks into their bloodstream, and they're not strong enough to fight it off. See, bacteria belong in certain areas, but not in others. You know, that people don't realize. E. coli exists within your intestinal tract. H. pylori exists within your stomach. But if it starts traveling to different area of bodies because of all these things being off, it's a bad day, and it's going to cause some major problems. Now, let's take a little section of that large intestine, and the reason why I want you guys to get to know this, like I said, guys, the coolest thing about the human body, if there's one thing in 2020 I want you guys to understand, man, you really study anatomy. It's the most fascinating thing in the world. You know, people always say, Doc, you've always been obsessed with the female body. Yes, because it's much more complicated and things are going in all directions, and for it to happen, it's absolutely incredible. And when things get thrown off, things are quite devastating. See, guys' bodies are much simpler. Even though we have the same anatomy for the most part, with the exception of genitalia, guess what happens? That just one change changes hormonal aspects, changes how the monthly and yearly cycles and things. But the cool thing is this, it's very dynamic. And so it's kind of cool to know all this stuff. So as you get to see why I took a little chunk of the small intestine, because there's something a lot of people really don't know. If you look, take a little small, there's actually a bunch of, villi that actually absorb a bunch of our water, nutrients, but they're also called goblet cells in there. Now, why is that important? Well, it's actually how I figured out one of the major things to use when it came to actually helping the GI, and why I like it so much. Because here's what happens. If you look at it this way, if you type in natural treatments for constipation, you're going to come up with 200 different things. It's not a joke. You'll come up with two different things. Why do we have so much success with constipation? Because we're really diving into the anatomy and the causal factors that actually cause this slow transit time and what we can do to reverse that process, and then the bowel movements move through properly. So now, but here's the one thing that a lot of people don't realize. They talk so much about absorption and things like that, but there's muscular layers in the both small and large intestine. But the large intestine has a significant amount of muscles, everywhere from longitudinal muscles to circular muscles. Why? Because of that smooth muscle lining that creates contraction, not only to actually spin our food, but actually to compress it, to actually get water out of it and get nutrients out of it that way. It's a huge muscle system. That's why a lot of times people feel cramping. You ever had a cramp in your calf? Guess what happens? It's devastating. You're like, ooh, it's very hard to walk on. But guess what happens? You can have that same smooth muscle contraction, cramping within the GI. And there's a difference of where they come from. So I want you to understand the anatomy, because I want to show you that one of the easiest things that you can do is actually understand where this comes from and where constipation is actually led from. So one of the greatest tools to actually start to see this process is this, an x-ray. An x-ray. Do you understand? I kind of find it funny that this is criticized a lot, but I'm like, don't you understand the basics? If you go to a GI specialist alone, do you understand one of the first things that they use for a diagnostic tool is an x-ray? Is an x-ray. Because you can actually see stool backup, you can see bowel gas, which is a form of inflammation happening in there. And the one thing that's kind of cool, as you can see that what that other lady did, just like this, you can see stool backed up, and it kind of travels her large intestine. Travels her large intestine. See, let me give you a little clinical pearl that only our doctors know. If we actually take an x-ray, which we do, and all of a sudden we see small intestine compared to large intestine, our wellness way approach is dramatically different. It's dramatically different because what causes things to actually make the large intestine change compared to the small intestine can be very different. That's why all of a sudden you say, Doc, I have constipation, and Dr. Greg did a stool test. Doc, I did constipation, Dr. Mitch did a food test. The doc did a constipation, and Dr. Jason did a hormone test. See, that's why when they say, what's good for constipation in general, I'm always like, I have no idea. I don't understand that language. Does that make sense, guys? A wellness way doc doesn't understand the language of what's good for constipation. To us, that's foreign language. It's like talking French to a Chinese person. We're like, don't understand what you're talking about. Because our mind goes to, if we see the large intestine massively inflamed, or a small intestine, or the stomach, which is so evident on x-ray. That's why GI specialists, which I know a lot of these guys personally, that their first diagnostic tool is always an x-ray. It gives them an idea to take another step. Now, you say, Doc, the GI specialist is looking for some pathology. I get that. They're looking for a tumor. That lady you saw, the 39-year-old that you saw at the first slide with an x-ray, that came from her GI specialist. They said, look, you're so constipated, we can't get it out. You have to do enemas, things like that. Now, you want to see this kind of cool? I love this. I love when you can see the distinct aspect of that large intestine. That's kind of cool. Okay? So if you're just starting right now, if you're to say, Doc, this is the first time I'm watching, okay, and you don't want to do anything, or you can't do it, just get an x-ray done, just to see where the inflammatory aspects of your bowel are. It's so cool. You say, we're not looking for tumors, even though they do show up. Dr. Jason showed me one the other day because he's like, I was actually traveling, and he sent me this picture. He goes, Doc, look at this one. Man, you see a big old fibroid right in the middle of her pelvis. And it's like, oh, wow, no joke, it's probably the size of a golf ball. And she was there because of hormonal problems. So you can see a lot in x-ray that you're never taught. See, the one thing about the way we do it, we like to teach you what we see. Because you know what the cool thing is this? We love testing. That's why our motto is we don't guess, we test. But we love retesting it even more because this can change dramatically once the insides change. Now, so then what slows that transit time? What actually affects that smooth muscle? What affects the absorption? What affects actually the water? What affects the bacteria? Well, it's kind of funny. If you look at things that affect the large intestine the most? I've listed out a significant amount of things that do. Number one, mental stress. By far. I know it's interesting. Guys, I'm not joking. I just have to tell you this. Do you know I was talking to one of my docs? And I'll say his name because he's a wonderful young man. His name is Dr. Matt Scott. Okay, he's over in our Bloomington office. What a wonderful young man, great clinician, a great individual. He's like, Doc, he goes, I've been with you now for a year and a half. And I asked him the other day, I said, Doc, do me a favor, call Dr. Jason, who's been with me for 17 years. Do you know I haven't said many different things in 17 years, in a year and a half, in 20 years? You know what I'm saying? I may have learned different analogies and way to deliver them, but I haven't said much different things. I want you to think about this, ladies. You guys hear about this all the time. Your kids hear, don't eat and go swimming. Okay, why? Because the body doesn't work that way. It can't be under a fight or flight and get blood to all the muscles and throw the blood in the intestinal tract and produce hydrochloric acid in the stomach and do all this while you're swimming. It's not meant to do that. Your body's smart, but it only has so much stuff to do. So when you're under extreme mental stress, it stops your stomach acid production. It slows your digestive process down. And by far, women are actually affected by more mental stress than men are by nature of their hormones. Their cortisol, their progesterone, their cortisone is much more drained than it ever is for men. And that's why I will always, I promise you, if you watch my videos 20 years from now, I will always, day one, 2020, 21, 22, till God takes me home, I will preach that we have to get our mental stress under control. Ladies, can you do me a favor? I'm going to ask you something. Can you please, in 2020, do everything you possibly can to keep this under control? I know it's hard. Trust me. I do. I understand. I don't know what you guys go through. I know you care about everything. I know, for example, that you care about every little detail. And I know that me as a man, I don't give a crap about most stuff all day long. Do you understand? Because that's what men are like. That's what we do. So it's easy for us not to stress out. But I do understand you guys because why? 20 years, toe to toe, talking about these things. And I get it. That's what makes you guys special. See, you're different. That's a good thing. Everybody tells you we're not the same. You're different. So if I can beat one thing into your head for 2020, please, I ask of you, I beg of you, please reduce this. Because you don't have to do anything besides reduce your mental stress and get sleep properly. And things will change dramatically for you in 2020. Doc, that cost me nothing. That's right. Dr. Matt and I were talking about that. Dr. Matt and I were talking to the fact that, Doc, you don't say many different things. You just make it very simple. I said, yes. And that's what happens even in healthcare. We complicate things so much. Last week's video, if you haven't watched it, go back. I talk about the difference between men and women in sleep. Ladies, if all you do is get proper sleep, the proper amount of time, you need at least 8 to 10 hours. I'm going to push more towards 10 on every woman on this planet. And you reduce your mental stress, I kid you not. You will come back healthier, happier, skinnier, better bowel movements, better everything. Everything. And I know I'm beating that point in because this is the last Saturday before the new year. And I'm going to ask you to make a Dr. Flynn resolution and put that in there. Keep the mental stress down. Okay. Number 2. Thyroid. Now why? Because the T3 levels actually induce contraction of the smooth muscle. So if you have a thyroid issue, it can actually slow the transit time down. So guys can go longer and so can women. And so then now the actually transit time has massively decreased. What else? Antacids. Hold the phone. That's not for the large intestine. No, stomach. Reduced stomach acid actually doesn't break down proteins properly. And now when it gets to the large intestine has to deal with full-length protein, not amino acid branch chains, and tries to break it down. And here's what happens. Now you're going to get some fungal overgrowth. Why? Because certain funguses do a great job of destroying proteins. I know you guys have never heard me say that, but some of the reasons why there's such an infection in the GI is because funguses do a great job of destroying proteins. Don't know this? Guess what? Guess what destroys you when you die? Funguses. It's meant to break down your proteins. They will eat them and break them down. But then guess what happens? You end up with a fungal overgrowth in your large intestine. And you don't realize it's because there's undigested proteins sitting in your large intestine. Do you understand? Proteins do not belong in your bloodstream. Amino acids do. What are amino acids? Broken down proteins. Antacids reduce the stomach acid. High blood pressure medication, calcium channel blockers, another high blood pressure medication, beta blockers, opiates. Opiates relax smooth muscle. Therefore, the transit time decreases. What else? Antihistamines. Hold the phone. Benadryl, Claritin, all of the major antihistamines that reduce this. Okay? Histamine by nature is an excitatory neurotransmitter. Let me say it again. It's an excitatory neurotransmitter. It's also produced massively in the stomach and large intestine. Why? Neurologically, it stimulates things. It stimulates contraction. So antihistamines actually grab onto the receptors in the stomach, also in the what? Large intestine. But doc, if I don't take it, I can't breathe. Well, then figure out why you can't breathe. Don't just take antihistamines and then all of a sudden there's other parts of your body that use histamines also. See, the pathways that exist for the immune cells to make histamine also affect other tissues of the body. There is no body part that's independent from the rest. That's why I kind of giggle that we're so into specialists. I know it sounds funny. You know where you need a specialist is when you need surgery. Because I don't want a foot specialist coming in during brain surgery. Do you understand? That's their expertise. But to treat a certain area with chronic things, when you're not dying, you're going to affect things negatively in other parts of the body. This is a perfect example. Iron supplements. Now, iron is needed massively, but here's what happens. When you take a synthetic form of iron, I'm going to say this personally, the only iron supplement you should really take is actually an encapsulated organic liver. Because now your body knows how to use that in order to break it down. Synthetic iron is actually basically a chemical, and your body doesn't know how to process it. That's what it calls constipation. That's why if you look at all of these synthetic baby formulas, they say has iron free, because the synthetic iron they put in is actually slows the transit time down because your body doesn't know how to break it down and get it through. So it slows it down. Now, food allergies, that's kind of a given. You're saying food allergies create a systemic amount of inflammation. That's why you see so much bowel gas. Little clinical trick. I'm going to explain this to you. Once again, I'm treating you guys like doctors. I train our doctors on this all the time. If you take an x-ray and you see massive amount of bowel gas in the large intestine, there's probably the best thing to do is a stool test, because there's probably a ton of bacterial overgrowth. If you see a bunch of gas bubbles in the small intestine, you probably have food allergies. So that's why, and it's not saying you can't have both, it's just that you probably have some food allergies contributing to that. Because why? Because that's the way the anatomy and physiology reacts. See, that's why when I sit there and study x-rays, yes, an x-ray is a test, just like a lab is a test. We actually look at these very clinically in detail. And there's so many things you can see from them, it's absolutely astonishing. That's why I love those things. Once again, too much or too little exercise. Yep, you got to get it right in place. You do. Because if you exercise too much, you shut down your GI. You exercise too little, you actually lose muscle mass, even smooth muscle mass within the GI, and your body will break down its own proteins. Aspirin and ibuprofen, this is a big one, guys. That's a big one. Birth control. Oh yes, I said it. Birth control is one of the, probably, in my opinion, the top 3 things that actually lead to constipation. It's listed significantly on your birth control packet that's this long. It's a major contributor. It so changes your stomach acid. It so affects the smooth muscle of your intestinal tract that birth control could be one of the biggest things that lead to constipation. Tricyclic antidepressants, ones that are more relaxing, ones that actually calm things down, because once again, you calm the neurology down within the actually intestinal tract. More things. Parkinson's medication. Once again, there we go. Neurological things. neurological things because they're taking some calming down to the brain to stop the tremors, but then you also affect the neurology that's in the GI tract affecting the smooth muscle. Guys, let me explain this. And my wife will laugh at this, especially when she was pregnant. Structural damage from your spine that you can see from the x-ray when it's malpositioned and out of place, and actually chiropractors term that a subluxation, actually causes neurological damage. That actually can lead to constipation. There's some of you guys that get adjusted and poop right away, my wife included. We actually my wife was literally talking about that to my daughters the other day, about she calls the poop button. Why? Because there's certain times that lower back is stressed out, then an adjustment is one of the greatest things that actually can release and actually stop some of that irritation neurologically in the lower back. And all those nerves control that smooth muscle there. So that's why if you're taking some medication that affects your neurology, or actually there's physical damage to it, and ladies, guess what happens? One of the major things that causes constipation is crossing your legs. Crossing your legs. And I say, Doc, you're doing two things. Number one, you're affecting the sacral plexus and the lumbar spine by crossing your legs. But also, guess what happens? You're also pinching off the bottom of the rectum. Have you ever seen the tool that became very popular, the squatty potty? Actually, it's not a joke. When you ever notice that when you actually bring the legs up, there is a ligament that does, release to the rectum. When you cross your legs, watch this, ladies. Try to cross your legs, sit on a toilet, and try to put your feet on the squatty potty. You can't. You can't. Anatomy-wise, it won't let you. So when you are crossing your legs, you are not only affecting things neurologically, you're also affecting things structurally. So ladies, let me ask you a question. Can you do me a favor? Guys included. Can you work on not crossing your legs all of 2020? Because it's just structurally unsound for our body. But Doc, ladylike. Now ladylike is crossing your ankles. Okay? And I see some of you ladies like, yep, I'm just going to sit like guys do. Well, I don't care. You do what you want. You know what I'm saying? But the idea is that something as simple as crossing your legs can actually negatively affect it. Low progesterone, low testosterone, you're right. Hormonal things have a major effect on it. Yes, testosterone, muscle building, strength, vigor. Well, guess what? Your small intestine, your large intestine, your stomach, all have those same muscles. The same smooth muscles that cause that contraction. So therefore, if you do have low testosterone, guys, it will slow your transit time down even more. You know what's really funny, though? I want you to think about this. And this is actually from Mayo Clinic's website. I just had to post this because as I read this, you got to think about their thinking and how they say this. Instead of explaining it properly, they don't understand it. So they list as one of the major factors of why women have constipation is because they are women. Risk factors for constipation. Factors that may increase your risk of chronic constipation, including older adult, being a woman. Think about this. They actually listed being a woman a risk factor because they don't get it. I'm sorry. I'm giving you my opinion. They don't get it. Why would they list a woman? Not everyone with a constipation. Well, you're more apt to have it. Yeah, because you're more apt to have some things like progesterone, things that can be affected much different than a man. But just by saying a woman, it actually goes, well, it must be genetic. Makes no clinical sense. It drives me absolutely batty. Now, so let me show you an example of this 39-year-old woman that had constipation. Man, look at that bowel. That bowel is supposed to be this big. It's this big. It took up half her cavity. That means, imagine a balloon that's expanding way past there. This woman was, if you can see her outsides, she actually had bulges going out and so much pain. It was absolutely ridiculous. But I want you to think about this. 39 years old, guess what she was doing? Protein pump inhibitors. She was stopping her stomach acid. Birth controls, Benadryl, muscle relaxers, calcium supplements. Yes, calcium supplements, like you talked about, can actually cause constipation. It will slow the contraction down of neurology that way. Guys, be very careful with supplementation when it comes to calcium. Be very careful. You can get calcium from chewing on this darn table. You can. It's overblown. The reason why women are so obsessed with calcium because you fed into this lie that milk does the body good, and you fed into this lie that calcium is needed for strong bones. You get calcium from almost everything you eat. From an apple to a piece of meat to a darn candy bar that's bad for you, but don't eat those things. But just because your estrogen levels and your vitamin D and your vitamin K levels and your PTH levels are not normal, that's why you have osteoporosis and osteopenia. It's not because you don't eat enough calcium. And people are eating so much calcium, taking calcium supplements that actually can lead to constipation. She also had 2 major food allergies. She had more than this, but she had 2 major IgEs. She also had a bad lumbar spine. So she had all these multiple factors. I can honestly tell you, in 20 years, and I'm going to repeat that over and over again over next year because we are going to celebrate the 20-year anniversary. And actually, so now we're starting our 21st year of the Wellness Way now as of today. Today's 20 years and 1 day, so we're starting our 21st year of practice. I can honestly tell you, there's not one aspect of constipation that was ever the same. The next woman that may come in as a new patient or guy on Monday may not be doing these things contributing to constipation. It might be something else. There's so many factors. Constipation is a visual effect. It's not a diagnosis. It's not a condition. It's a response. But you know what something is this? I actually believe I know most causes of constipation, and there's really only one. Our current medical advice. They advise children when they're young it's okay to have all these bad things. Use Similac and all these iron-based supplements. Don't, bring your child to a chiropractor. Don't have them taking a supplementation. It doesn't matter. Feed them food before they're 1 year old. Get all these things that affect your immune system. It's okay to eat bad. We don't need to do these things. Don't drink enough water, drink soda. I mean, the advice and stuff like that people are given, that children are given, that adults are given by our current doctors actually leads to major aspects of constipation. I can honestly tell you, every person that has ever had constipation was just an effect of all the other things that they've been doing their whole life based on bad advice. And where are they getting advice from? Like I told you, the woman that came in at 39 years old, she had seen so many doctors already. And the current advice they were giving her was leading her to a very negative state. Now, how is she doing still to this day? Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Her GI is as normal as everybody else's. That's good. See, the cool thing is this. The clinical results, like I always tell you, is why we've been around for 20 years and will continue to go. Because I don't care how much people get other people to pay for their health insurance. I don't care, for example, how many people more medical procedures come out. If we're on the same level of thinking that got us into the problem, we're going to stay in the same problem. If you have a bad idea, guess what happens? It doesn't matter who pays for it, it's still a bad idea. If we don't change the thinking, that's why you have to have a different perspective on this. Otherwise, you're going to run and actually take 20 different medications for laxatives, for constipation. Now, if you look, current advice, so what can people do? What can people do just for some things right away? Okay? I kind of gave you some things just by understanding anatomy. But I will tell you this. I actually have a favorite food when it comes to just making the bowel move properly. All right? So what we're going to do is this. I'm actually going to, I have my phone right here. You can see it's playing right here. Thank you for all you guys that jumped on. Do me a favor. What is Dr. Flynn's favorite food for the bowel? And the first person that gets it, okay, I'm going to give away. I'm going to give away a free food allergy test, a book, and a Think Differently t-shirt. Oh yes, $400 worth of stuff. You betcha. I've been just a giving away fool all December. I love it. So if you can tell me what my favorite food for the bowel is, and I'm going to list it. So I'm going to give you guys just a minute or two. Do me a favor also. How was everybody's holiday? Mine was absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed it. Enjoyed it with friends and family. I enjoyed it with people. I can honestly tell you guys, I'm so excited not only for tomorrow and the next day, but 2020, because I get to spend amazing time with amazing people. I get to live life with my beautiful bride, my awesome kids, my wonderful staff, all the people that are here. I mean, it's kind of cool. Today in studio, it's only guys. It's testosterone today. We were jamming to the music. If you go on my Instagram, look at my boys behind there. Okay. See, always remember, You can't do anything without other great people. And so you guys get to see me do all this, but remember, there's so many people behind the scenes that we never see. But it said they deserve just as much credit as me sitting up here, okay? So what has it been? So as you guys are doing on here, let me see. As I'm just seeing you guys jump in, keep on going because no one got it yet, okay? But I'm going to list it. All right? What is my favorite food for the bowel? And I'm going to just let you guys know this. Unless you're a patient, believe it or not, I've never said this publicly, but there's a clinical reason. No joke. My wife makes this for me on a regular basis, and I actually love it, and it tastes great. And when I was in New York City, okay, one of the coolest places to go visit, I love New York City. We actually went to an amazing organic restaurant, and they had this made into a pudding form, which is the way that my wife makes it, in the form of chocolate and vanilla. And right now, that's what she's making for me right now, putting xylitol in there because I can't have anything that changes blood sugar. And watching it pop in, let's see if people are going to get that. My favorite food for the bowel by far is chia. Chia. It's absolutely incredible for the bowel. If you want to talk about transit time and actually increasing that transit time in a very healthy way, eat chia. Now, what you want to do is make chia pudding. It's one of my favorite foods to eat. I love it. I mean, Christy, what she'll do, she'll take jars, little small jars, and she'll put them in the refrigerator. She'll actually make it with coconut milk and hemp milk and almond milk. She mixes them up. She'll put them in there, and they'll soak for 24 hours, if not more. And they get all nice and puffy, and guess what happens? Oh, it's so good. Let it soak in that good milk, okay? Then she'll put flavors, like she made a pumpkin spice one. Guys, I was sitting in the deer stand. I was sitting in my hunting stand, and I'm sitting there, nice heated area. I was sitting there eating a chia pudding, watching deer walk by and all the animals walk by. It's a good life. It's a good life. So it was great. Man, it's a great food to chew on. It's very filling. The insoluble fiber within chia is so dynamic. It's so good for the bowel. The bacteria love it. It actually brings moisture. It brings water to the GI, which reduces the amount of rabbit turds you could ever have because it allows water to stay within the stool. It's such a great fiber for the GI. So I love it. I think chia pudding should be a regular. It's also great to cover your sweet cravings because what happens is this: sweeten it with xylitol, sweeten it with stevia, add some spices in there, like we put pumpkin spice. So I have pumpkin spice chia pudding, vanilla, chocolate, everything, whatever you like. Christy made a cool one the other day that was kind of nice. Okay, number 2, aloe. Aloe is mainly water. It actually gets to it. That's why I love aloe. If you've been to a Wellness Lake Clinic, you'd probably take aloe. 2 of my favorite foods on the planet for the GI, by far. Guys, if all you do, ladies, if all you do is this, speaking to you ladies, reduce your stress, get some sleep, eat some chia, take some aloe, 2020 is going to be a much better year for you. Much better. Much better. Simple lifestyle things that are going to change your life forever. Number 3, apple cider vinegar. You guys know I couldn't go far without that. Still one of my favorite foods for everything on the planet. For everything. There's one food that can blanket just about every tissue of the body. It's apple cider vinegar. But it helps so much with your stomach acid and keeping the bacteria where it belongs in the large intestine that it's going to majorly affect constipation. Magnesium, potassium, and sodium. Yes, it's the reason why calcium supplements actually can sometimes hurt because it needs all of them together. Now, am I against a calcium, sodium, magnesium supplement that way? No. Those in combination can do well, but that's why calcium a lot of times constipates people because it's missing its other electrolytes, its other minerals. Coffee enemas. Yes. One of the greatest and cheapest forms to clean out the large colon is actually coffee enemas. It's cheap. Once you buy the kit, you can buy it on Amazon. We don't sell it. Just buy it on Amazon. Buy any kind of enema kit that way. Coffee is one of the greatest things for your large colon. And doing coffee enemas is actually essential for health. I do them on a regular basis. They're essential. Get adjusted. Yes, get adjusted. I'm telling you right now, you'd be surprised about the amount of women, even guys that cross their legs, have pelvic problems, have lumbar problems that contribute to the neurological damage that leads to constipation. That's why a lot of people will literally get adjusted and walk to our bathroom and take a poop. Happens all the time. You think I'm joking? Ask any of our doctors. Ask any chiropractor. Doesn't have to be a wellness way. Ask any chiropractor across the country. Go see your chiropractor. They're going to do wonderful things actually to keep those bowels the best it can neurologically. Xylitol. Yep. A lot of people say, Doc, I took xylitol and I pooped my brains out. Yeah, you need to. Do you say, keep eating it. Doc, I keep pooping the way. Keep eating it. Keep eating it. Because eventually you'll figure out some of the bowel problems going on and you won't react to xylitol. You know why xylitol actually creates diarrhea? Because number one, there's a microbial battle in your large intestine, but it also brings a lot of water. Xylitol, xylitol doesn't change the blood sugar, okay? And guess what happens? When xylitol actually is going through the intestinal tract, it's a fiber that doesn't break down. So therefore, it draws water into the large intestine, and therefore, guess what happens? If you are not absorbing water well, or there's an infection, you'll get diarrhea. So xylitol, if you get diarrhea with xylitol, you got an infection in your GI, a little clinical pearl. Just remember that, all right? Vibe plates. A lot of people can't exercise because of actually maybe of age, because they've had some damage or knee problems or back problems. Vibe plates are essential. Guys, if you don't have a Vibe plate, they're only about $1,000. I know it's a lot of money, but guess what happens? It's a $1,000 investment. People will spend a lot of money on beds, which you got to have a good bed, and so that. But this is something, if I'm going to ask you to do, get a Vibe plate. They're absolutely incredible. They create contractions that all through smooth muscles, all the way through the body, and you're standing there. Being on a Vibe plate for like 20 minutes is like an hour workout statistically to your body. It's fantastic. That's why a lot of people get off the Vibe plate and they're like, oh, their legs give out a little bit. Why? Because they've been working out. And what happens, that's why people, as they get older, Vibe plates are one of the most important things. Why? Because they can't move their joints like they did before. That's why. Chamomile. Remember I talked about those little goblet cells? See, people say, Doc, chamomile is very calming for the GI. Well, how? That's people, I say, how? Well, here's what happens. If there is a problem with absorption, if there's a problem with those goblet cells, not only does it stimulate mucus production, it also helps with its regeneration. Yes, chamomile helps with goblet cell regeneration and mucus production. That's why when we take chamomile, those rabbit turds actually have some more mucus, and they become less dry, and that's how chamomile does affect the large and small intestine. But chamomile also affects the goblet cells that are to the brain, and also affects it to the lung barrier also. So it's actually a major, wonderful thing to drink on a regular basis. I don't drink chamomile tea. I actually take it as the high potency herb from Wellness Way. Avoid stomach acid stopping things. No antacids. It's very important. Do not do that. I know your stomach burns, but figure out the stomach, otherwise you're going to lead to a lot of constipation problems. Evaluate all things you are taking. I gave you a list. Your doctors are going to tell you to take a lot of things, from protein pump inhibitors, from some psychiatric medication, from GI medication, from heart medication, from blood pressure medication. Guys, guess what happens? These things can lead to major constipation problems. It's why I gave you my very strong opinion that the reason why we see so many things this way is because of the advice you are getting. You need to sit down and evaluate, and if you don't know about them, find a doctor that does. Find somebody that thinks differently. Once again, it's why the Wellness Way videos are traveling all over the world, because we get you to think differently. And then when you can think differently, you take a better action. Food allergies. It's big, guys. Like I said, that's why I'm going to give away a food allergy to the first person that put down chia there, because you need to find out what it is. You need to see what is being so inflammatory to actually damage that whole stomach, small and large intestine. Guys, listen, we need to stop listening. We need to start learning to think differently, because the minute you think differently, you're going to take new actions. And one of the major actions that I have been doing now for 48 days today is this, is I actually got rid of all forms of sugar. Actually, I was sitting down with my wife and my team, and I was kind of going over this. My major form of sugar that I ate over the last years was organic potatoes. Yes, not processed sugar, organic potatoes. Next was rice. Next was fruit. So I've cut out all forms, including honey, including maple syrup, include all organic, all perfect ingredients, but but I cut it out for 47 days now. Nicole has cut it out now for 27 days. She's 20 days behind me that way. So her and I sat down with our team and said, listen, it's actually been pretty awesome. And here's what happens. It's not a joke. Food is by far the most emotional thing we do. That's why it's sometimes some of the advice we give you is so difficult. If it was up to me, I'm not joking. Give me a stack of potatoes and throw our melt butter on there and put a bunch of spices on there and put garlic on there. That to me is a meal. You know what I'm saying? That to me, I just fill myself up on that. Give me some rice and some, cook up a chicken breast, cut it up, put a bunch of spices and sauces on there. That to me, heck, that's my kind of meal. You know what I'm saying? But here's what happened. My liver didn't process sugar that well. When you go back and watch my potassium video, the reason why I dropped some weight was when I realized I was deficient because, once again, sugar will deplete your potassium levels. And then I realized that, once again, I had to cut them out. And I did. And I started way before Thanksgiving. I started 47 days ago. 48 days ago now. Tomorrow's 49. And I'm going to continue all the way till February 3rd. Now, why February 3rd for me? Because then I'm going to Hawaii, and there's no way I'm giving up on that dragon fruit and papaya and pineapple, the organic stuff in Hawaii. I'm going to eat it, okay? Because why? I can't emotionally make it through Hawaii and not do it. But anyways, my point is this. Nicole and I started a Facebook page, No Sugar January. Before I got up here, we had 800 people signed up on the page. It's a private page. Now, what's going to happen? We're going to have the page up for the whole month. Then we're going to delete it after because we're going to do a campaign. And I'm going to do some giveaways on there. What are we going to do? Nicole and I and a couple of docs and people are going to sit there and chat with you, share what they're eating, put some recipes on there, go through everything, support each other. Because here's what happens. Food is by far the most emotional thing that we do, bar none. Bar none. I know what it felt like on December 25th when at my house, my family was all over. There was an amazing array of food in my house. Not one thing that had gluten, dairy, soy, corn, anything bad. But you know something? Half of it I didn't have. Do you know why? Because there was sugar there. I mean, in fact, there was potatoes there. We had amazing taco bar. I didn't have taco shells. I actually had fish. My wife made me fish. Okay, we had fish tacos and things like that. We had some great things. I don't lack in food, but I'm not joking. This is the one thing that Nicole and I both struggle with. We eat really good. We keep the organic stuff. We keep the no gluten, dairy, corn, soy, all the things like that. But it happens this, our body doesn't process sugar well. So therefore, we can gain weight really quickly. If I eat a gluten-free piece of bread every day for 1 week, I'll gain 5 pounds. My liver doesn't process it well. So I stopped. I dropped 20 pounds already. Do I feel any different? Not really. People say, Doc, do you feel different? Nope. Because why? I've already had great testosterone levels. My blood count's amazing, all the things like this. But you know where I feel better? Right here. I feel better right here. Because I don't care who you are. If you hold a little bit of weight, you mentally beats you up a little bit. I've been there with you guys. Trust me. My videos get watched millions of times all over a year. All over the world. But don't think, even as a man, that when you hold a little pudge, that you don't have a complex either. I get it, ladies. I get it, guys. I do. So, in that month, we're going no sugar. We already have a ton of people to sign up. I get the struggle. I've been vulnerable and honest with you guys. Guys, trust me, I've shared my life with you guys, shared a little bit of my story if you haven't seen it yesterday. People don't realize that I actually drove 4 a.m. to go work up in the office and work on my ideas. And I forgot to tell you this. I didn't get paid. For 3 months. Didn't want to get paid. The doc was generous enough, Dr. Reed Hubert, one of my closest friends, 23 years, let me come up and work my ideas in his office. I didn't want him to pay me. He let me sleep on his couch. That was payment enough. His friendship was payment enough. I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to get it. Do you understand? And trust me, I understand struggle. People see the success of 20 years. Man, if I were to share my successes with you, yeah, it'd take me a couple hours. But if I was to share my failures with you, do you have 2 or 3 days? See, I've been there. I understand struggle. I get it. But let's struggle together. Let's do it together. This January, trust me, join us. Join me, Nicole, Patty, Dr. Patty. She was commenting on the page this morning. Thank you, Dr. Patty. all you guys, join the struggle with us, because food is a struggle. We're not set up for success, we're set up for failure. Don't believe me? Walk into the grocery store. I'm going there right after this to get some things. Do you understand that 95% of that store, I thank God for the 5% because at least you can eat it, but 95% of that stuff is actually poisonous, but tastes so darn good. Now, we don't eat that stuff, but even in that organic section, you can have too many corn chips, organic, GMO free. You can have too many rice chips. You can have too much organic potatoes. I get it. Come join us in No Sugar January. I will probably get on there video lives and just complain and whine like a little kid. I get the struggle. So guys, thank you dearly for 2019. You guys give me strength every day. Number one, I will say this, God gives me the most strength. I pray for wisdom every day that I can share a different perspective and wisdom and things that can change your life, where you don't feel like you're being sold, you don't feel like you're being misled. You're just given great ideas that you can take action steps that will change your life. Thank you so much for 2019, guys. 2020, I promise you, will be better. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful December 28th. Hey, thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a single video or live stream. Also, share this video with a friend. Once again, thank you for watching.